wanted. And when I had told them and said that I wanted to join the SA, the man in charge asked me, "Were you a soldier?" I said, "Yes, indeed." "In the First World War?" "Yes, indeed." "Do you have awards for bravery?" "Yes, indeed." "What do you have?" And then I said, "Iron Cross, first and second class, and I served in the Hessian Lifeguard Regiment." Then he said, "Well, if you've served with such a glorious regiment, and as a soldier at the front too, then you don't belong in the SA at all. But just as there was an elite guard in the Kaiser's time, there's an elite guard now in the new movement which you wish to join. And that is the SS. That would be much more right for you. You should join the SS."
Dann wäre es ja viel richtiger, Sie treten in die SS ein.
The SS that Karl Wolf joined was Nazism's black order of chivalry. Motto, "My oath is loyalty." Insignia, the death's head. Their black uniforms symbolized their ideals: severity, terror, the cult of the conquering Superman. In Mein Kampf, Hitler had written, "As National Socialists, we see our program in our flag. In red, we see the social idea of the movement. In white, the nationalistic idea. In the swastika, the mission of the struggle for the victory of Aryan man. And, by the same token, the victory of the idea of creative work, which as such always has been, and always will be, anti-Semitic." In January 1933, President von Hindenburg invited Hitler to form a government. The Nazis celebrated in Berlin. Hitler told his cronies that this was the beginning of the greatest Germanic racial revolution in world history, reversing the progress of the colored races, Mongols, Slavs, Jews, Gypsies, and Bolsheviks. Hitler was head of a frail coalition of the right. Nazi ministers were totally inexperienced in government and might have had their racial policies blocked by civil servants. In practice, they found them eager to cooperate. Interior Minister Göring outlined the new government's priorities.
Ich werde mit eisernem Besen auskehren und alle diejenigen, die ausschließlich wegen ihrer roten oder schwarzen Gesinnung und zur Unterdrückung aller nationalen Bestrebungen in Amt und Würden sitzen, hinausfegen. Besonderes Augenmerk aber gilt dem Volk und Reich zerstörenden Kommunismus. Ihm habe ich den schärfsten Kampf angedacht. Die gesamten Machtmittel des Staates und die geschlossene Kraft...
On February the 27th, the Reichstag, Parliament, was mysteriously destroyed in a fire. It was the excuse Göring needed. He brought in an emergency decree to combat the threat of revolution. The SS and SA, now given police functions, took into protective custody all subversive elements, specifically communists, anarchists, social democrats, and their active supporters. The internment centers came to be called concentration camps. Within weeks, they held 30,000 of Hitler's political opponents. Hitler had himself voted emergency powers indefinitely. In April, the SS and SA led a national boycott of Jewish businesses, a propaganda exercise to unite the country by focusing attention on the universal enemy. A good Aryan German should demonstrate his essential Germanness by acts against the Jews, the anti-race. Within a week, laws appeared forcing out civil servants of non-Aryan stock. The professions, doctors, lawyers, scientists, and teachers, also moved to exclude Jews. 50,000 Jews were driven to leave Germany. But the demonstrations were not a total success. They made some people sorry for the Jews. Leaders of the 500,000 Jews who still remained in Germany formed an organization to try to convince the Nazis that they too were loyal Germans. Sigmund Weltlinger, a stockbroker living in Berlin, was an influential Jew.
Ich war leider kein Prophet in dieser Angelegenheit. Ich habe das feste Vertrauen zu meinen deutschen Landsleuten gehabt.
I, unfortunately, was not a prophet in this situation. I had complete trust in my German compatriots on the basis of long years of experience dating from the years before the First World War. I could not imagine that a people could change so much. I didn't believe that there was any threat to me personally, to my body or my life. I thought, I shall come through all this. I didn't run away from it.
Ich bin nicht ausgewichen.
May the 10th, 1933. The SS, the SA, teachers and students collected books judged not in keeping with the national spirit. The works of Lenin, Freud, Heinrich Mann, Marx were burned in a public act of cultural purification. In the new state, intellect was suspect. It smacked of Jewishness. What was needed was unthinking obedience. Intellect rots the character, said Himmler. Propaganda Minister Goebbels.
Das Zeitalter eines überspitzten jüdischen Intellektualismus ist nun zu Ende. Der Durchbruch der deutschen Revolution hat auf dem deutschen Weg wieder die Gasse freigemacht. Und der kommende deutsche Mensch wird nicht nur ein Mensch des Buches, sondern auch ein Mensch des Charakters sein.
Behind the scenes, the SS was becoming the most dreaded organ of the state. In place of the casual brutality of the SA, they introduced cold, calculated terror. Hitler had said, if propaganda has imbued a people with an idea, the organization can draw the consequences with a handful of men. The SS were to be that handful.
After the takeover of power, Himmler asked me personally. He said, I need you. I want to build up this Knights Order of the SS, and for that I need an elite guard, and I want to set up an active SS troop. I myself, unfortunately, never fought on the front and wasn't an officer. I must have somebody who was. The army won't give me any of their qualified people, largely out of jealousy. So I allowed myself to be persuaded, and thereby, if you like, I came by fate to the SS. To be Himmler's adjutant.
Adjutant bei Himmler geworden, habe dann ein wunderbares, organisatorisches und führungsmäßiges
And there I had a wonderful field of activity, organizing and leading with nobody over me. And through that I had an unusually rapid rise through the ranks.
In power, the Nazis could employ all the resources of the media to promote the racial rebirth they believed in. Hitler said, anyone who understands National Socialism only as a political movement knows virtually nothing about it. It is even more than religion. It is the will to create a new man. The SS would lead the way.
For Himmler had set out to achieve a dream, and he was very influenced by it himself. He would be the creator of a new awakening of the Germanic race within the German people, which, because of the many lost wars in the Middle Ages, had been overrun by many other strains from the East, the West, and the South, which had mingled with and clouded the blonde Germanic ideal.
Ideal eingetrübt haben oder vermischt haben.
The dream, as set out in films like Blood and Soil, was simple but seductive. It idealized the unchanging values of the country, of a natural life based on fresh air, good food, and loyalty to the family. It stressed the essential nobility of the blonde Germanic peasant. his blood as rich and fertile as the German soil he tilled. In the cities, the birth rate was lower than it was in the country. And the city was stark, impersonal, mechanized, cosmopolitan, dirty, defiled. The Nazis couldn't check the drift from the land, but they denounced cities as centers of race chaos, which suited the special characteristics of the Jews and gave them a chance to push themselves forward. Party rallies always featured the true folk, the peasant. Hitler had written, "A state which in this age of racial poisoning dedicates itself to the care of its best racial elements must someday become Lord of the earth." Nazism was political biology, and films were made to demonstrate Darwin's laws of natural selection, survival of the fittest.
Wird denn nun wirklich einer von den Hirschkäfern im Kampf getötet?
Höchstwahrscheinlich. Für die Aufnahme brauchen wir es jedenfalls.
Eigentlich grausam. Da zwingt man diese schönen, starken Tiere zum Kampf auf Leben und Tod. Und in ihrem Walde hätten beide so ruhig weiterleben können.
Aber liebes Fräulein Volkmann, ein ruhiges Leben ist doch nirgends in der Natur zu finden.
Aber Herr Professor, es fressen sich doch nicht alle gegenseitig auf.
Wenn auch das nicht gerade. Aber sie leben alle in einem ständigen Kampf. Dabei wird das Schwache vernichtet.
Der kranke Vogel fällt der Katze zum Opfer. Der gleichen Artgenossen finden Kämpfe statt, denen der Schlechtere zum Opfer fällt.
Tiere also eine regelrechte Rassenpolitik.
In gewisser Hinsicht ja. Allerdings geschieht diese Auslese mehr instinktmäßig. Hat aber eine Tierart die direkte Verbindung mit der Natur verloren, dann findet keine natürliche Auslese mehr statt. Wir sehen das ja an unseren Haustieren. Dann muss der Züchter für die Reinerhaltung der Art sorgen. Ich kann Ihnen dazu übrigens auch ein paar Filmaufnahmen zeigen.
Ganz zielbewusst kann man gewisse Spezialeigenschaften immer weiter vererben lassen.
Horses, the film goes on to explain, are bred for different purposes, for racing or for the plough. Such ideas must be extended to humans too. The struggle for survival demanded a pure-blooded, healthy youth. Love between the races was unnatural. Hitler said he aimed at the rebirth of the nation by the deliberate breeding of a new man. The SS were to begin this project.
Ja, indem man sich eben diese Mühe gab.
Well, by taking great pains with measurements of height, the shape of the skull, and exact registration of color of hair, color of eyes, and then in certain circumstances ears and chin, and right down to all these sort of things, so that by selection and collecting together we could then wait for the development. But only ever the positive racial thought, how can one improve something, breed it? Never with the thought. Nobody ever spoke about it, and it never occurred that we arrogantly spoke of exterminating anybody who didn't happen to have been born with a white skin, or who was culturally inferior to us, or undesirable. That was a frightfully degenerate development, which only came with the pressures of war, with all the other degeneracy that war brings.
Mit seinen vielfältigen Entarten zustande gekommen sind.
At Nuremberg, in September 1935, the Nazis announced racial laws. The Reich Citizenship Act, and the Act for the Protection of German Blood and German Honor. Goering declared the end of Jewish political rights. Marriage or sex between Jews and nationals of German and Allied blood were both prohibited